Most Americans assume that living abroad long-term comes with only two choices. Either you deal with complicated visas, endless paperwork, and rules that change without warning, or you go all the way into the full residency process and basically rebuild your life from scratch. But that's not entirely true. Right now, there are countries where Americans are quietly staying for years, legally, without going through the kind of immigration maze most people expect. And the surprising part isn't just that it's possible, it's how simple some of these setups actually are. Especially if you're over 55, living on retirement income, and you're done watching your savings disappear in an expensive American city. But here's where it gets tricky. Not every easy country is actually easy. Some have hidden requirements. Some have renewals that look simple on paper but get annoying in real life. And some are only affordable if you avoid the tourist traps that quietly drain people's budgets. So in this video, we're breaking down 7 exotic countries where Americans can stay for years with systems that are far less complicated than most people expect. We'll cover what makes each country work, what can quietly ruin your plan, and what kind of lifestyle you can realistically afford once you're there. Quick note before we start. Immigration rules can change, and your personal situation matters, so always double-check the current requirements before you move. The goal here is clarity, not legal advice. And make sure you stick around until the end, because the #1 country on this list is one most Americans still don't take seriously. But once you understand how the system works, it completely changes what retiring overseas can look like. If you're planning retirement, thinking about leaving the US, or you simply want a life where your money goes further without giving up comfort, hit like, subscribe to Exotic Expat, and let's get into it. Number 7. Belize. When people picture Belize, they think vacation. They think beaches, snorkeling, maybe a quick trip to see the Great Blue Hole, and then back home. But for a certain type of American, especially someone over 55, Belize is quietly becoming something else. It's one of the simplest soft landing countries in the Western Hemisphere. English is the official language. The culture feels familiar enough to reduce stress, and the pace of life is slower in a way that actually feels livable, not isolating. Now, here's the key. Belize gives Americans a very flexible way to stay long-term, and it doesn't force you into a complicated immigration identity crisis where you suddenly need to become a different person on paper. Many Americans start with the standard entry permission and then extend locally. It's not glamorous, but it's straightforward. You're not competing for appointments 6 months out. You're not trying to decode a system that feels designed to confuse you. And if you're truly planning a retirement lifestyle, Belize also has a well-known retirement-oriented program, often discussed as a pathway that can make long-term living easier for older foreigners. The details matter, and you'll want to read carefully. But the bigger point is this. Belize is one of the few exotic places where the transition can feel simple, especially if you value English communication and a low-friction daily routine. Cost-wise, Belize can be affordable, but it's not automatically cheap everywhere. If you choose the most tourist-heavy areas and try to live like you're on vacation forever, your budget can quietly get wrecked. The smart move is to live like a resident, not a tourist. You can absolutely keep monthly costs reasonable, especially compared to many US cities, but you need to be intentional. The trade-off is infrastructure. Belize is not the place you move to for perfect systems. Things can be slower. Certain services may feel inconsistent depending on where you live, but for many retirees, that's not a deal breaker. It's the price of living in a warm, coastal, English-speaking country where your days feel lighter. And if you think Belize is already surprisingly doable, the next country gives you a bigger lifestyle upgrade without jumping into a complicated visa process. Number 6. Colombia. Colombia has a certain kind of magic that doesn't really show up in travel brochures. You land, you walk outside, and within a few weeks you realize something feels different. Life is still full and interesting, but the pressure drops. The constant financial stress that so many Americans live with starts to fade because the math finally starts working in your favor again. Colombia has become one of the most accessible, long-term options in Latin America for Americans. And it's not just because it's affordable. It's because the long-stay structure has gotten more modern, and it's built around the reality that people want to live there, work remotely, retire, and actually settle into a real routine. Depending on your situation, Americans often look at longer-stay visa options that can cover extended periods, and Colombia has has been known for offering routes that feel more approachable than many other countries in the region. The exact category you choose depends on whether you're working remotely, living on retirement income, or simply want a longer legal stay with renewals. But the bigger reason Colombia works for retirees is lifestyle to cost ratio. In cities like Medellin, you can get modern apartments, good internet, strong food culture, and daily conveniences that feel surprisingly developed. And your day-to-day spending can be dramatically lower than back home. You're not just cutting costs, you're changing how you live. Eating out becomes normal, services become affordable. You can buy back time. Now, Colombia does come with reality checks. You need to choose neighborhoods carefully. You need to stay aware, and you need to respect the fact that it's not a theme park for foreigners. But for many Americans, those are manageable trade-offs. Because when you combine affordability with a system that can support longer stays, Colombia becomes more than a try-it-for-a-month destination. It becomes a place people quietly stay for years. And coming up next is a country that feels even more exotic, where Americans keep arriving, planning to stay a few months, and then somehow they're still there years later. Number 5. The Philippines. In most countries, long-term living comes down to one question. How long before you have to leave? 90 days, maybe 6 months if you're lucky. And then you're back to planning flights, dealing with renewal rules, and living in that constant countdown mindset. The Philippines plays a different game. Instead of forcing you into a strict timeline, the Philippines is known for allowing Americans to extend their stay repeatedly, often up to multiple years, without requiring you to jump immediately into a full residency program. The process is incremental. You don't have to qualify for a complex visa category on day one. You don't have to show massive income up front for the basic extension process. You extend in stages, and those stages add up into something rare: continuity. And that continuity changes how life feels. Because in most places, you're managing your stay. In the Philippines, you're building a life. You can rent a place, settle into routines, get comfortable with an area, and not feel like the system is constantly trying to kick you out every few months. For older Americans, the Philippines can also feel culturally warm in a way that's hard to explain until you experience it. People talk, people help, community is real. And if you're coming from an American environment that's become isolating or expensive, that social warmth can be a bigger upgrade than the beaches. Cost of living can be very low depending on where you choose to live. You can live modestly and comfortably on a retirement budget that would feel impossible in many U.S. states. But just like anywhere else, the best lifestyle comes from smart location choices. Some areas are built for tourists and short-term foreigners, and those areas can inflate your spending fast. The trade-off is bureaucracy and patience. Renewals are doable, but you need to stay organized. You can't be careless with deadlines, and infrastructure varies widely depending on where you live. Still, if your main goal is to stay for years without feeling forced into complicated immigration pathways, the Philippines is one of the most overlooked options on the planet. Now here's where things start to shift, because the next country on this list isn't about extensions. It's not about programs. It's about something even simpler: showing up and just staying. Number 4. Malaysia. There's a reason Malaysia keeps showing up in quiet conversations between long-term expats, even though it almost never goes viral on social media. It's exotic without being chaotic, modern without being overpriced, and for Americans who want to stay long-term in Southeast Asia without turning their life into an immigration project, Malaysia is one of the most practical setups you can realistically build. At first glance, it doesn't look like the easy option. People assume it's paperwork heavy, strict, and only designed for high-income expats. And yes, Malaysia does have structured long-stay programs, and you do need to meet requirements. But here's what makes it different. When a country offers a real long-stay pathway that's designed for foreigners on purpose, not as a loophole, it tends to feel more predictable, less drama, less guessing, less maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. Malaysia has long been known for second-home style arrangements and long-stay options that many retirees explore, and the appeal is simple. You're not bouncing in and out every few months trying to reset a clock. You're setting up a life that can actually run for years with renewals and rules that are clear enough to plan around. And the lifestyle value is where Malaysia quietly dominates. You can get modern apartments, reliable internet, and strong day-to-day infrastructure in places like Kuala Lumpur and Penang. Healthcare is often a major reason older expats feel comfortable there, because private care can be high quality and far more affordable than what most Americans are used to paying back home. And your money tends to stretch in a way that makes retirement feel stable again, not
not fragile. But there is a trade-off. Malaysia isn't the show up and forget about it country. It's more structured. You'll be dealing with requirements, documentation, and a process that you'll want to get right the first time. Some people love that because it creates stability. Others hate it because it feels like homework. Still, if you want an exotic, warm weather country where long-term living can feel organized and comfortable without chasing complicated citizenship dreams, Malaysia is one of the most underrated options out there. And if Malaysia feels like the practical exotic choice, the next country is pure tropical energy with a long stay setup that surprises a lot of Americans once they see how it actually works.
Number 3, Indonesia. If you've ever pictured retiring somewhere truly exotic, warm air, ocean sunsets, daily life that feels slower and more human, Indonesia is probably already in your head. Most Americans think of Bali first. And yes, Bali is real. It's beautiful. But the bigger story is that Indonesia isn't just a place people visit anymore. It's a place people set up a long-term rhythm, especially older expats who want something tropical without spending their retirement budget like it's a luxury vacation. Now, let's be honest about what people get wrong. They assume Indonesia is either impossible to stay in long-term or it's only possible through sketchy workarounds that eventually catch up to you. In reality, Indonesia has legal long-stay routes that foreigners use specifically for longer living, including options designed around extended stays and retirement-style arrangements. The exact category and requirements matter, and you want to do it correctly. But the point is this: you're not limited to a short tourist stay if your goal is years, not weeks. And once you're there, the lifestyle-to-cost ratio can be powerful. Rent can be far lower than what you'd pay in the US, especially if you choose a calm area instead of the most hyped neighborhoods. Daily expenses drop, food becomes simpler, services become accessible, and something subtle happens over time. Your retirement stops feeling like a countdown clock and starts feeling like a life again. But Indonesia comes with trade-offs, and you need to respect them. First, the system isn't automatic. You're going to be dealing with renewals, local processes, and rules that you should treat seriously. Second, island life is real life. Infrastructure varies. Healthcare planning matters. And if you want the smoothest experience, you need to choose your location strategically instead of choosing it purely because it looked good on Instagram. Still, for an American who's tired of paying premium prices to live a cramped, stressful life, Indonesia can feel like a reset button. Tropical, affordable, and genuinely different from the world you're leaving behind. And coming up next is where the list starts to get even more retiree-friendly. Because the next countries don't just offer exotic living, they offer systems that are known for letting Americans stay longer with less friction. Number 2, Thailand. There's a reason so many Americans go to Thailand just to try it, and then don't leave. But it's not only because it's beautiful, and it's not only because it's affordable. It's because Thailand has layers. At first glance, the visa system can look confusing. Different options, different requirements, and the rules can shift. But once you understand how people actually stay long-term, you realize something important. Thailand isn't about one perfect visa. It's about flexibility. There are established pathways for retirees, and Thailand has been one of the most famous retirement destinations in the world for a reason. It's built around the reality that older foreigners want to live there long-term. And once you get the structure set up correctly, life becomes incredibly livable. Your housing costs can drop dramatically compared to the US. Daily expenses can feel light. Healthcare is often a major reason people stay. Private care can be high quality and more affordable than what many Americans expect, especially compared to US pricing. And the lifestyle is comfortable in a way that's hard to describe until you experience it. Good food, friendly culture, modern conveniences in major cities, and a pace that feels less stressful. But here's the trade-off, and you need to hear this clearly. Thailand is not set it and forget it. You have to stay organized, you have to respect deadlines, and you have to follow the rules as they change. For some retirees, that's fine. For others, it's annoying. Still, when you compare Thailand's lifestyle value to what you pay to exist in many American cities, that annoyance becomes a small price. Because in Thailand, your retirement can feel like it finally makes sense again. You're not burning money just to stay afloat. You're living. And if Thailand feels like a strong option, the number one country on this list is the one that tends to surprise people the most. Because it's not just affordable and beautiful, it's strategically positioned, senior-friendly, and designed to make long-term living feel stable without turning your life into a visa project. Number 1, Panama. If you asked most Americans to name a country where they can retire abroad comfortably. Panama often comes up, but most people don't understand why it works so well. Panama isn't just popular because it's warm, or because it's near the US, or because people like the lifestyle. It's popular because the system was built to attract retirees. Panama has long been known for having structured options that can make long-term living realistic without feeling like you're fighting the government every step of the way. It's one of the few countries that seems to understand what older foreigners actually want: stability, clarity, and a path that doesn't feel punishing. And unlike some countries where rules change constantly, Panama's reputation comes from being relatively consistent over time. That consistency is everything when you're planning years, not months. Because the biggest hidden cost in retiring abroad isn't always money, it's uncertainty. The stress of not knowing if your legal status will turn into a problem later. Panama also has practical advantages that retirees care about. The time zone aligns well with the US, which makes it easier to stay connected to family. Flights are relatively simple. Modern services exist in key areas, and you can build a life that feels international, but not disconnected from the world you came from. Cost of living can be very reasonable if you live like a resident and avoid overpriced expat-only bubbles. And because Panama is so established as a retirement destination, you can find communities, resources, and support systems that make the transition smoother, especially if you're moving alone or moving later in life. The trade-off is that Panama can feel more structured than the purely visa-free options. You may deal with applications and paperwork if you want the most stable long-term setup, but compared to what most Americans imagine when they hear immigration process, Panama can feel surprisingly manageable. And for an American over 55 who wants to stop bleeding money in a high-cost US city and start living a dignified retirement in a warm, exotic place, that manageability is the whole game. Because when you step back and look at all 7 of these countries, one thing becomes clear.
Living abroad long-term isn't as complicated as most people think. It's not always about finding the perfect country. It's about finding the country that matches how you actually want to live. For some people, that means maximum simplicity. Show up and stay. For others, it means a stable retirement pathway with predictable rules. And for many, it means one thing above all: a life where your savings finally last, your stress drops, and your days feel like they belong to you again. Because at the end of the day, the real advantage isn't just where you go, it's how easy it is to stay. Now I'm curious, out of these 7, which country would you actually consider living in for a year or more? Put it in the comments. And if you want more videos that break down real options for living better, spending less, and building a retirement that actually works, subscribe to Exotic Expat. Until next time, live simply, think globally, and don't waste your best years paying premium prices for a life that doesn't even feel good.